They mocked the fat black kid at school, and the lesson they would never forget. That night, Jamal Rivers sat at the kitchen table with his mother, helping her sort through bills. She looked tired, the fine lines around her eyes deeper than he remembered. Life hadn't been easy for them. Rent, groceries, gas. It all added up, and Denise Rivers worked 2 jobs just to keep them afloat. As he helped her write out checks and balance their meager budget, Jamal felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. He wanted to do more. He wanted to be more. Not just for himself, but for her. For the family that had raised him to be strong, to be patient, to fight only when it truly mattered. Over the next few months, Jamal threw himself into his schoolwork. He stayed late in the library, poring over textbooks and taking notes. He joined the wrestling team not because he needed to prove anything but because it felt good to move, to test himself, to channel his energy into something constructive. Coach Darren Mitchell, the wrestling coach, took one look at Jamal's size and strength and grinned like a kid on Christmas morning. Under Coach's guidance, Jamal honed his skills, learning leverage, technique, and strategy. He wasn't the fastest on the mat, but he was methodical, relentless, impossible to shake. By the time the season ended, he had earned his place as one of the team's anchors, respected not for his size, but for his dedication. Logan Whitaker never returned to Westfield High. Some said his family moved to Houston. Others claimed he transferred to a private school where nobody knew what had happened. Jamal didn't waste time thinking about him. Some battles once finished are better left behind. On the last day of school before summer break, Jamal stood outside the gymnasium, the late afternoon sun warm on his face. Students streamed past him, laughing, shouting, tossing notebooks into the air. He felt someone approach and turned to see Mr. Charles Benton, the school's guidance counselor, holding a small envelope. "Jamal," he said, smiling, "I thought you should have this." Confused, Jamal opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. It was from the local community college, an invitation to join their summer enrichment program for leadership and academic excellence, fully funded, a path forward, a door opening. As he read the words, a lump formed in his throat. He thought about everything it had taken to get here. The jokes, the shoves, the ruined lunches, the long nights wondering if it would ever get better. He thought about his mother, about Coach Leon Walker, about the father he barely remembered, but whose lessons had shaped every step of his journey. Jamal Rivers, the boy they once laughed at for being too big, too different, too invisible, had carved a place for himself, not through anger or revenge, but through patience, resilience, and quiet, undeniable strength. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Then he shouldered his backpack, took a deep breath, and stepped forward into the bright, endless stretch of the future, unafraid, unbowed, and completely, utterly himself. They thought he was just a fat black kid, easy to mock, easy to humiliate, easy to bully. They laughed at the way he walked, whispered cruel jokes about his size, snickered when they saw him squeezing between the crowded tables. They believed he was too slow, too soft, too weak to ever fight back. But they didn't know. They didn't know Jamal Rivers had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 6 years old. They didn't know that beneath the thick sweater and heavy frame was a body that knew how to move like water, how to bend without breaking, how to strike with precision and leave no room for mistakes. Westfield High buzzed with its usual Tuesday morning chaos. Lockers slammed shut, sneakers squeaked across polished linoleum floors, and teenage voices roared through the crowded hallways. But today, something felt different. A new face had appeared. Jamal Rivers stepped through the main entrance with a slow, cautious gait. His backpack slung low, his hands casually tucked into the pockets of his hoodie. He didn't wear flashy sneakers or designer jeans. No gold chains, no loud colors, just a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a pair of battered Air Force Ones worn down from years spent walking cracked sidewalks. If you glanced too fast, you might miss him. But if you truly looked, if you gazed past the broad shoulders and the quiet eyes, you would feel it. He wasn't like the others. He carried a stillness, a steadiness. Jamal didn't walk like someone who was lost. He walked like someone who knew exactly where he was going and exactly who was watching him. Heads turned as he passed. Some kids elbowed each other, giggling. Others glanced, frowned, then quickly looked away as if staring too long might be contagious. After all, this was Westfield High, a place where being different wasn't just noticed, it was punished, especially if you were black, especially if you didn't fit the mold. And Jamal, with his broad frame and silent defiance, was the perfect target. The king of that kingdom, the ruler of both the lunchroom and the locker room, was Logan Whitaker, varsity football team captain, grandson of the mayor, an all-American smile with a rattlesnake's heart. Logan had been watching Jamal since first period, sizing him up, sneering to his friends about the new heavyweight champ waddling into their school like he was searching for the nearest buffet table. It didn't take long. By lunchtime, the plan was already set in motion. Jamal sat alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, unwrapping a turkey sandwich his mother had packed that morning in their small East Main Street kitchen. No fancy water bottles, no protein bars or organic salads, just a sandwich, a bruised banana, and a battered bottle of tap water. Across the room, Logan and his crew, Brett Carson, Zach Monroe, and Cole Griffin, leaned across their table, laughing a little too loudly. Loud enough for Jamal to hear. "Man, somebody get this guy a second tray. Looks like he's starving," Logan shouted, his voice cracking through the cafeteria like a gunshot. Laughter erupted around him. Some kids tried to pretend they hadn't heard. Others giggled into their hands. A few just stared, wide-eyed and silent, too afraid to join in. Jamal didn't flinch, didn't look up, didn't even pause as he calmly took another bite of his sandwich. That calmness, it wasn't ignorance. It was a choice. A choice not to play their game. A choice to keep his control. Logan hated that. He wasn't used to being ignored. When he humiliated someone, they were supposed to cry or get mad or at least look scared. Jamal just sat there unmoving as if Logan's words were no louder than the hum of the old cafeteria lights. That afternoon, the games escalated. In the hallway between third and fourth period, Logan accidentally slammed into Jamal hard enough to scatter his books across the floor. Nearby students froze, waiting for the explosion. Jamal knelt slowly, gathering his books with steady hands, and stood up without a word. No glare, no threat, just that same unshakable calm, which somehow felt more dangerous than any shouting match. Logan grinned as he walked away, tossing a smug wink over his shoulder. But deep inside, a tiny seed of frustration had been planted. Because Logan wasn't just after easy wins. He needed reactions. Without them, he was nothing. That evening at home in their modest apartment tucked between the old brick buildings of Westfield, Jamal sat at the dinner table across from his mother. The TV hummed in the background, playing a rerun of Jeopardy, as she spooned mac and cheese onto his plate. "So, how's the new school treating you, baby?" she asked, her voice warm but threaded with worry. Jamal shrugged, scooping some green beans onto his plate. "They're just kids, Mom," he said softly. "It's the same everywhere." Denise Rivers studied him for a long moment, her hand resting gently on the worn wood of the table. "You remember what your daddy always said?" she asked. Jamal nodded without looking up. "The strongest man in the room is the one who doesn't have to prove it." His father had etched that lesson into him back at Mr. Leon Walker's dojo on Maple Avenue, teaching him how to move like a river, fall like a leaf, and strike like a hammer, but only when absolutely necessary. Not for trophies, not for street cred, for survival, for dignity. Jamal didn't want to fight. He never had. But if they pushed him too far, he knew he could end it in a way they would never forget. He only hoped it wouldn't come to that. But deep down, a part of him already knew. Boys like Logan didn't stop. Not until they were given a reason. And Jamal Rivers had every reason he needed. The next morning, the chill of early fall hung in the air as Jamal walked toward the front entrance of Westfield High, his breath forming faint clouds before him. His hoodie was pulled tight against the cold, his hands buried deep in the front pocket. He could already feel the stairs gathering like storm clouds as he stepped through the metal detectors and into the wide, echoing halls. It didn't take long before Logan and his pack spotted him. They leaned against the lockers like a pack of wolves scenting blood, grinning in that way that said they had plans for today. Jamal kept walking, his heavy step steady, his eyes fixed forward. He passed them without a glance. That simple act, ignoring them, was enough to light the fuse. Between third and fourth period, Jamal stopped at his locker to swap out his books. As he reached for his history textbook, a shove from behind sent him sprawling forward, books tumbling onto the linoleum floor. A low chorus of laughter rippled through the hallway. Jamal stayed down for a moment longer than necessary, breathing slowly through his nose, gathering the frayed edges of his temper before standing. When he turned around, Logan was standing there, hands raised in mock innocence, a smirk plastered across his face. "Easy, big guy. Don't fall and crack the floor," he said loud enough for the surrounding students to hear. Jamal bent down, picked up his books one by one, dusted off his sweatshirt with slow, deliberate movements. He didn't say a word. That silence, that absolute refusal to react, settled uneasily over the crowd. It was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be easy. But somehow Jamal's calm made everyone else feel just a little less sure about the joke. Logan's smirk faltered for a half-second before he laughed and clapped one of his friends, Brett Carson, on the back, leading them down the hallway like nothing had happened. At lunch, Jamal found his usual spot in the far corner. His lunch was simple again. Peanut butter sandwich, an apple, a bottle of water. The noise of the cafeteria washed over him in waves. Shouts, laughter, the clatter of plastic trays on metal tables. From the other side of the room, Logan watched him with narrowed eyes. He couldn't let it go. It wasn't just about Jamal anymore. It was about pride, about showing everyone who was in control. Logan sauntered over, flanked by Brett and Zach Monroe. He planted himself in front of Jamal's table, arms crossed, a wide grin stretching across his face. "What's up, Big Mac? This your throne now? King of the losers." A few kids nearby laughed nervously, but most looked away, pretending not to notice. Jamal took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly, then set it down neatly on his napkin. He looked up at Logan with an expression so calm, so unaffected, that it knocked Logan off balance for just a heartbeat. Logan recovered quickly, his grin sharpening. He grabbed Jamal's water bottle and dumped it over Jamal's lunch, soaking the sandwich, the apple, the napkin. Gasps rippled through the cafeteria. A hush fell over the nearest tables as every eye turned to watch. Jamal stared down at his ruined lunch for a long moment. His hands rested on the table, fingers curled slightly, as if he was weighing every possible response. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him, feel the heat rising in his chest, but he stayed still. He gathered the soggy remnants of his lunch, stood up, and dropped them neatly into the trash can. Then he picked up his backpack and walked out of the cafeteria without a word. Behind him, Logan laughed loud and long, slapping high fives with his friends. To anyone who didn't know better, it looked like a victory. But to those who paid attention, it felt wrong, hollow. The cafeteria buzzed with uneasy whispers long after Jamal disappeared from sight. That afternoon, in Mr. Leon Walker's small dojo, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop on Maple Avenue, Jamal knelt on the worn mat, tightening the knot on his belt. The air smelled of sweat, old wood, and discipline. Coach Walker, a wiry man with graying temples and eyes sharp as razors, watched him from the side of the mat. "Rough day?" he asked without preamble. Jamal shrugged. "Same as always." Coach Walker nodded as if he had expected the answer. "You know what you gotta do if they push you too far." Jamal nodded, the old lessons etched into his bones. Stay calm. Control the space. Don't escalate unless there's no other choice. Coach Walker cracked a rare smile. "Good. Remember, son, real strength ain't about winning fights. It's about knowing you don't have to." Jamal bowed slightly and rose to his feet. They drilled for an hour. Guard passes, choke escapes, leverage drills. Jamal moved with a fluidity that belied his size. His body honed by years of quiet, disciplined training. As he walked home under the fading orange glow of the sunset, he felt lighter, centered. The knots in his chest loosened by the familiar rhythms of the mat. But deep down, he knew the tension at school wasn't going away. It was building, coiling tighter with every passing day, like a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. Friday arrived heavy with humidity and the threat of rain. The morning announcements crackled over the intercom as students shuffled through the halls, but the usual chatter was muted. Cautious word had spread about the cafeteria incident. Kids who usually followed Logan's every move now watched him with wary glances. Something had shifted, subtle but undeniable. Jamal moved through the day like a stone through water, unbothered on the surface, but aware of every ripple beneath. He knew Logan would make another move. He could feel it in the tightness of the air, in the way Logan's friends huddled together whispering during free period. He didn't know when, but he knew it was coming.